Hey, Viking fans, Cy Amundson here with the Vikings Entertainment Network, and we are going to get you all ready for the 2020 NFL Draft. We're going to be going position by position with our experts, breaking down some of the possible picks that could fit well with your favorite team. And we're going to start off by being joined by former NFL wide receiver, current BEN contributor, Ron Johnson. And Ron, we have you because with the departure of Stefon Diggs for the first time in a while, the Vikings could possibly find themselves going after a highly touted wideout.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to when they drafted Laquan Treadwell, that was kind of the thought then at number 21. Nobody knew Stefon Diggs. Nobody knew what Adam Thielen could do either. So Laquan Treadwell was technically the first time in a while they had tried it. Didn't work out because, as we know, Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen became huge stars. But in this year's draft, it's very unique for the simple fact of 22 and 25, and that they are able to go after a receiver. They can package the deal, go up higher, maybe package some other picks, come back into the first round and get a tackle. So I'm excited because you are going to look at a guy like Kirk Cousins, who we know they're a run-first team, but he can sling the ball, and you're going to need a guy. I mean, you're never going to really replace Stefon Diggs, but you're going to need a guy to help out Adam Thielen so he's not getting double-teamed every game.
And this is a perfect year to be kind of faced with that problem, Ron, because this draft is wall-to-wall with wide receiver studs. You sent me a list of some of the guys that you think would fit particularly well with the purple, so I want to run through those, and I want to start out with a guy that everybody's talking about, Oklahoma wideout and incredible, cool name haver, CeeDee Lamb.
Fires a bullet back in the end zone to CeeDee Lamb. Tunnel screen, CeeDee Lamb trying to get outside, and does. CeeDee Lamb stays on his feet, and he will go the distance.
Yeah, I mean, this draft for real with receivers is the names of all names draft. I mean, it's going to be some really cool ones out there. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb, I mean, at 6'2", he's unique because he doesn't look 6'2" when he plays. When he plays, he reminds you of a 6-footer, 5'11" receiver, just the way he's able to move, the body control, his ability to get open in zone holes. But he reminds me, honestly, of DeAndre Hopkins, a little bit bigger, but he has that same body control. He has that same ability and smooth route running. He's not herky-jerky. You don't see a lot of wasted movement, and that's what DeAndre Hopkins does. CeeDee Lamb could be that guy for a team, and for the Vikings, he fits because he's a self-starter, and he's not a guy that needs 14 catches a game to kind of get into the game like DeAndre Hopkins. Every once in a while, you'll see Hop have 5 catches, but they're huge plays, and he takes them as they come. CeeDee Lamb at Oklahoma, the way that explosive offense worked, he was the same way where you wouldn't see him for a while. Then all of a sudden he'd explode on the scene with a big catch, and then he kind of build from there with the rest of the game. And we know this is a run-first offense. At 6'2", he's a good blocker. And that's another part of the Vikings offense with receivers that they need is guys that are willing to block down the field. So Dalvin Cook in the second level is not getting tackled.
Well, from one major college program to another, we got back-to-back Bama guys here that you like. Let's start out with the first guy, Jerry Jeudy.
One of the best ever at wide receiver for the Crimson Tide.
Get it to Jeudy.
In zone. Touchdown. Guess who?
Right back to him again. Able to beat a man in space down the sideline. Jerry Jeudy, what an effort.
Yeah, I mean, again, another name, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, it's just a name that's just marketable. You can throw that on any box of any item and you're going to sell it. But Jerry Jeudy sells himself when you watch him on film. He's kind of like Odell Beckham, but a little more herky-jerky. But when I say Odell Beckham, I just mean when he gets the ball in his hands, he can take a hitch, a slant, or even a reverse to the house. And that's what Odell Beckham does. Jeudy is going to have to learn where he fits in an offense because he's not a line of scrimmage guy. He's a guy at Alabama that motioned a bunch. And so Jerry Jeudy to a team could come in like a Calvin Ridley did to the Falcons and be somebody's, Robin to their Batman right away, where if he went to the Saints or somewhere like that. But with the Vikings, again, he could be a very complimentary piece to Adam Thielen because Thielen's going to be your bigger body receiver where Jeudy is going to kind of be your Stefon Diggs replacement. And I think he actually fits, but you're going to have to jump up high to get Jeudy, not to pun on words, but you're going to jump to get Jeudy because he's going to be a top 15 taken receiver. But there are so many other receivers in this draft that if you don't want to jump to get them, there's other guys.
Yeah, and one of those other guys is the complementary piece to JEUDY on the other side of that field for Alabama, Henry Ruggs III. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I liked Henry Ruggs the first. I really liked Henry Ruggs the second, but the third, I mean, we always know the trilogy is the best.
Quick slant complete, Henry Ruggs. You can forget it. Fastest guy on the Alabama team.
End zone. It's caught for a touchdown. It's a pass out to Ruggs, who's got plenty of daylight. First play of the game. How many times have you seen this? 75 yards.
And so when you're looking at Henry Ruggs, he's a guy that played alongside Jerry Jeudy. And a lot of times when you play with a Biletnikoff candidate receiver, you don't get to shine. But Henry Ruggs shined where this is going to be the first time in a while where you see two receivers from the same team go in the first round. And I think he's a guy that can be a Tyreek Hill for a team. He's a home run hitter. His top end speed is absolutely ridiculous. He's a gamer. When you turn on the film, his route running and some of that stuff's going to need to get worked on a little bit more in the NFL. And so when you look at where Ruggs could fit, he has to fit into a system where you're not asking too much of him too soon, because like Tyreek Hill, he's going to have to learn how to run NFL caliber routes. But I mean, he's a guy that you're going to have to bet high on, and then he could pay off with a high reward later.
Clemson, T. Higgins.
Yeah, this guy's my favorite. Of course, I mean, I'm 6'3", 230 pounds, so I love big receivers. T. Higgins is a different animal. I mean, he is a beast. If you watch him play, you'll think you're watching Davante Adams because his routes are smooth. He commands the middle of the field. He's a really good slot receiver, and you don't hear that a lot from a guy that's 6'4". But T. Higgins at 6'4" can also play that big man basketball, football, where just post me up and throw it up high, kind of like Kirk Cousins did with Kyle Rudolph. Now you have a guy that can get down the field, and you can have some 50-yard bombs that you're just throwing up and saying, hey, big fella, go get it. And that's what I like about T. Higgins. But his route running is one thing you didn't see a ton at Clemson, because a lot of his routes were just digs, goes, hitches, and slants. So he didn't have a lot of double move stuff or a lot of post, corner post, and some of the routes you see guys like Davante Adams run. But in this offense, we know the play action for the Vikings was huge, and T. Higgins is a guy that can still get behind the defense and play action, but he's also a guy that Kirk Cousins can take a chance with. And that's what you often need, because we know Stephon Diggs was his deep guy, I'm gonna take a chance. T. Higgins could be his deep guy, I'm gonna take a chance, but it's more of a balloon throw. Just throw it up if you are in danger, and hopefully Kirk Cousins can have the faith in a guy like T. Higgins. I really like T. Higgins. Like, he is my number one guy because he can fall right to that 22, 25 spot for the Vikings without having to do any more to go get him.
Let's close your five out here with Laviska Shenault out of Colorado.
Over the middle, complete, room to run, catch and run, first down. Shenault has even more room to run. Goodbye, Laviska Shenault.
I mean, if you look at Deebo Samuel, if you look at Anquan Bolden, and you put a little bit more speed on those guys, that's what you have in Laviska Shenault. I mean, he's 230 pounds, and when you say that on a 6-foot frame, 6'1" frame, you think running back. He lives in the weight room, I feel like. Like, I feel like he goes to sleep at night and his bunk bed is actually a bench press machine. And, you know, he's just benching the top bunk every night because the guy is built. And so when you watch him return kicks, I mean, you think about losing a guy like Marcus Sherrills. You think about not wanting to put Mike Hughes back there on punt because he's going to be your number one corner. Laviska Shenault can come in and actually be that guy to return kicks and punts. He's extremely dangerous, but he's also a bowling ball. When he gets the ball on kickoff, if you watch him, he runs through guys like Juggernaut. I mean, he's running through guys, and it's taking multiple hits before he's going down. And he's the same way when he gets the ball in his hands. A guy like Laviska Shenault reminds me of how Deebo Samuels, you watched him in the Super Bowl, you watched him in the NFC Championship game, you watched him versus the Vikings, and Samuel gets the ball and he runs hard. That's what Shenault does. And I think he's a guy that also you don't have to jump up to get him. You can get him at 25. You also can get him in the second round where he could become that Michael Thomas guy that drops down to the second round, or even a Juju guy that drops to the third round, because there's so many receivers out there, and he becomes very productive like Juju was to the Steelers and like Mike Thomas was to the Saints. Shenault is a guy that's kind of under the radar because he went to Colorado, so you don't see a ton of his games on TV. But when you turn the film on, he runs hard and he runs angry.
Ron, I love it. You're the best of the best. I can't wait to see which one of these guys wind up in purple and how many of them might. And I can't wait to see you talking about them on Sundays. Thank you so much for doing this. And Viking fans, remember, we're going to keep going position by position and breaking things down for you as we walk up to the draft. We'll see you guys soon. Hey, Viking fans, Cy Amundson here with the Vikings Entertainment Network, and we are going position by position as we get you ready for the 2020 NFL Draft. Joining me now is former Vikings linebacker, current sideline analyst, Ben Leber. And Ben, today I want to talk your native position, because even though it might not seem like the most urgent need on this team, that doesn't mean that the purple won't at some point consider a linebacker in this draft.
Well, first of all, Cy, it's always good to see you and hear you. And this is the draft is coming up, man. Whether we think it's coming or not, I feel like every day is Groundhog's Day. And it seems like time has stopped in some regards with this whole shutdown. But no, the days are chugging along, and the draft is going to be upon us pretty soon. So I'm pretty pumped. I'm pretty excited. Yeah, like you said, linebackers should not probably be a high priority focus for the Vikings in the early rounds. Now we're talking, 2 firsts, a second, and 2 thirds. Maybe a possibility of a guy in the third, but definitely the first 2 rounds, I would not expect the Vikings to look at linebacker, just because we got 2 freaking studs already, roaming the middle right now, and there's some really talented quality linebackers out there, especially in the mid to late rounds, that I'm excited to talk about.
Well, great knowing that. Let's walk through some of the guys that you sent to me that you thought might be good fits with this defense.
Yeah, so let's start off by, again, saying there's 3 guys that are super talented that I just do not think that the Vikings will have a chance to get, and nor should they even go after in the first round. So I'm looking at more of, again, third and beyond. Most likely in the 4th round and beyond. The Vikings have a bunch of picks down there. A guy that really surprised me, I think, because of where he plays at Appalachian State, and just not really knowing much about him, was Akeem Davis Gaither.
It was a close play, and on the next play, it's an interception. Akeem Davis Gaither.
You turn on the tape of this guy, he's 6'1", about 225 pounds. So he's not overly big, but he sort of fits the role of what college football and the NFL is going for, is guys that can play out in space. He was the Sun Belt Conference's Defensive Player of the Year. He sort of just lines up all over the tackle box. This is the crazy part. He's often out of the play by a lineman, and then somehow the ball will go across the field or handed off or thrown on the other hash, and that dude's making the play. He's truly going almost sideline to sideline a lot of plays in half the game. He's really fun to watch.
The next guy on your list, we got a Wisconsin boy, and when you sent me some clips of this dude, I mean, the one thing that stuck out, we always talk about guys who maybe aren't exactly pretty on the field, but this is a dude in ZACK who just gets the job done.
Okay, I got to be honest. The first 10, 15 minutes, Cy, I was like, I don't like him. I don't get it. I don't know what everybody sees in this guy. He's a true stand-up on the edge line of scrimmage, 3-4 outside linebacker. He's not overly athletic. I don't think he's got the quickest feet. I don't think he's really bendy and real flexible. I don't think he's got great hips. But then the next 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes that I watched, I'm like, well, that was a great play by using his hands. Well, that looked really quick. Good separation there. Wow, his short area quickness was better than he displayed in the last few plays. And then the next thing you know, you've watched a whole game and you're like, shoot, he had a sack and 3 tackle for losses, and he disrupted a bunch of plays. Like, I kind of like this guy. Like,
yeah,
the guy, like you said when you set it up, it's not always pretty, but he's productive and he gets it done.
All right. Well, now before we kick you out of here, these are the guys that fit in really well with the Vikings. But I know that you've been studying every linebacker in the draft as you do all your coverage leading up to it. Tell me about the top 3 guys that I keep having to listen to you tell me about on the phone. Tell the audience about how great these top 3 guys are.
Interception, Isaiah Simmons.
Well, I think if you pay attention to the draft, it's unavoidable when you talk about linebackers that Isaiah Simmons from Clemson is on the top of the list, and he's a really interesting guy because you don't really know where to put him. He's a safety, and I'm not just saying like a former safety as far as position. They will line him up as sort of this middle of the field hybrid safety, even in base situations where he's about 12 yards past the line of scrimmage. And then they have the regular linebackers, they have the regular safeties, but he just kind of stands back there, assesses the play, runs downhill, shoots a gap, and makes the tackle. He can line up anywhere on the field. He truly is a hybrid player. He's a fierce attacker. When he gets to the ball carrier, it's punishing. He's real leggy, though. I mean, he's 6'4". He's high-hipped. He's got long legs. He changes direction okay, and I think that's part of the reason why I have a hard time. I love all of his skill sets, but I do wonder, when it comes to changing direction with the taller body, is that going to translate to the NFL? But as far as pure talent and watching just an absolute animal on the field, Isaiah Simmons is a beast.
Just a monster. And the other two names for fans to look for. I know you love Queen, right?
I do. I think it was a toss-up, and I'm paying attention to mock drafts, and of course I'm paying attention to what all the experts are saying too. And I think pretty overwhelmingly, a lot of people have Kenneth Murray Jr. from Oklahoma above Patrick Queen from LSU. But when I look at the tape, I sort of like Patrick Queen's makeup a little bit better. I think one thing with him is he only started 16 games in his college career, so he doesn't have a lot of starts under his belt. But man, is he twitchy. He's got really good feet. He just seems to play with a little bit more instinct, I think, sometimes than Kenneth Murray. And Murray is, he's a taller guy. Murray's a little bit in the same build as Isaiah Simmons, not quite as versatile, but he's got good feet as well. But he just seems like instinctively he overruns a lot of plays. Everything has to sort of work out for him on the play for him to make the play. And I think Queen just has a little bit more natural football instincts, and I think you're going to get more out of him.
Ben, as always, I value your expertise, and I enjoy your infuriatingly handsome face. Thank you for breaking down the linebackers. You're the best. And check out all of the Vikings position-by-position draft previews, and we will see you guys for more here on the Vikings Entertainment Network. Cy Amundson here with the Vikings Entertainment Network, getting you all ready for the 2020 NFL Draft. Joining me today is former linebacker, current color analyst for the Vikings, Pete Berich, and we are talking defensive line. And what we're doing here, we might not necessarily be giving you the 5 best linemen that are going to come out of this draft. We kind of sifted through to find the 5 guys that we thought were a good fit with this organization that you, and with Mike Zimmer's defense, that you could talk about. Pete, so I want you to kick it off with a guy that I know you love a lot, JAVON KINLAW from South Carolina.
Yeah, JAVON KINLAW is a freak, and he's a Jadeveon Clowney type of physical freak. I mean, right now, at least his height, weight at the combine about 6'5", 315. But when you see him on the hoof, he doesn't. You imagine in your head how big someone who's 315 pounds is going to look. This guy is proportioned, and he is one of the strongest players that I've seen at the point of attack. I mean, he has an interesting history. He was homeless. He grew up homeless, bounced around. Those kinds of guys have a tendency to not take things for granted. So, it's a very interesting, very interesting story. The only thing on him that you've heard on the negative side is just his motor, and by that I mean doesn't give it 100% on all the plays, and has a tendency to fall away. But because in the NFL you have to give 100% effort on every single play. But if this guy puts this thing all together, he is so strong. And plays with leverage. Now, you'll hear the phrase maybe a little tight-hipped and that kind of thing. It's a catch-22 because that gives him the power that he has. Now, with the size and everything, he does remind me of Kevin Williams. Kevin Williams was a massive man. He was just huge. I think Kevin ran a little bit better than this guy, but with his size and talent, it's going to be hard to see him last, 15, 20 picks into this draft.
Well, and if you see a guy like that, like you said, drafts break out in a bunch of different ways. And we have those 2 picks right in the 20s there. If he does slip there, it's hard not to take a long look at a guy that size who's not like you've inferred sloppy in the way he's put together. He's just an absolute monster.
He is.
Let's move to Neville Gallimore, a guy, he came out of Oklahoma, but he is a native Canadian. Born in Ottawa, which you don't hear a lot in the NFL, but this guy, another really big dude who moves well.
Yeah, he's 6'2", 302 pounds, so another very, very big guy. He opened up a lot of eyes at the combine when at 6'2", 300 plus ran a 4.79 40. So he can run, and the beauty of it is he uses it. He's the best, I think, sideline to sideline type run defender that I've seen of all this group. The question is can he move to a 3 technique type position and play over a guard and be able to dominate over a guard? That'll remain to be seen. But with defensive linemen, work ethic means so much, and this kid has that. He's going to take coaching. I think he's going to want to get better, but an unbelievable talent. Again, could be, he's been a nose tackle mainly in college, may be able to play some 3 technique, great burst. Good speed. Chasing down running backs. And in the NFL now, with so much of the outside type runs, and this kid can absolutely run and keep up with that. So I think, this kid would be another one that you would love to have on your roster, regardless of how you get him. He'd be a huge, huge asset to this defensive line group.
He always reminds me, maybe not in terms of size, but he's also got that, Pat Williams also had that thing where all of a sudden you'd see him just mow all the way down the line to the sideline and make a great run-stopping tackle. So I really like that about this dude. Let's head into the Big Ten for a little bit. Let's go to Iowa with A.J. Epinesa.
A.J. Epinesa, he's intriguing in that, he had 25 and a half sacks in his career at Iowa. So you have to, and he played for 3 years in a row. So he was either, a redshirt sophomore or sophomore. And he's had multiple sacks every single year that he's, been in Iowa. A little, 6'6", 280. So he has the size and frame, and he's going to be even bigger, and he's going to continue to get bigger. A little disappointing. He ran a 5 flat or 5.04 40 at the combine. And when you watch him on film, he doesn't have that burst or doesn't have that speed on the outside. So he may be a guy that a team would look at moving inside. Anyone who's watched this kid play knows his demeanor. And this is why, as a scout, you got to meet with coaches. You got to meet with the secretaries at the football offices and talk to the trainers and talk to the weight coaches, because he's very, very even keeled. And that's not that that's a bad thing, but I just never saw the guy show any emotion.
Absolutely. And, I hear what you're saying about demeanor, but I will point out a guy we've already talked about. Kevin Williams wasn't necessarily a bastion of shouting.
No, he wasn't. But he played the game. I remember sitting down at the combine and asking him, you get in those rooms, you have 10 guys in there, and the player sits in the chair, and and Scott Studwell asked him, so what do you do in your spare time? What do you like to do? And Kevin just kind of paused and he goes, fishing. You know what I mean?
Well, let's go from Iowa to Penn State with a uniquely named giant, another big, tall defensive end, Yetur Gross-Matos.
Now you talk about not only just an interesting name, but a pretty amazing story. His father drowned when he was 2 years old. When Yetur fell in the water, his dad jumped in to save him, got him out, and then drowned right afterward. And then just a few years down the road, his older brother was 12 at the time, but he was struck by lightning while on a baseball field. So this young man has been through quite a bit. And for him to have gone through all these things and continue to play at a high level like at Penn State, it shows a lot of resiliency. And you love that about kids, about guys who make the choice to continue on and not look back, because those are a lot of reasons for him to have go astray, and he hasn't. Good player. You take a look at his numbers at 6'5", 264. So he's long. We like that here. I do think he's a very, very raw pass rusher, though, meaning his technique and those kinds of things, he has a lot of room. You look at a kid like this, you think of maybe a Danielle Hunter down the road, meaning that if you bring this kid in, it might take him a few years, to take him some time and some development. But good speed. You can't coach big. Can't coach a guy taller and bigger, really. And it's hard to coach speed. But you just watch him play. He's not the most instinctive player. I think so he's going to have to develop the football knowledge and the football acumen. But it's going to be hard to outrun him sideline to sideline.
Well, let's close the list down with maybe my favorite guy on the list that you sent to me. And speaking of a guy who's a little bit of raw but has a ton of upside, and a guy that could be available for us late in the first round, Terrell Lewis out of Alabama.
Yeah, you're right. He's a guy 6'5", 262. He moves and runs and looks like Danielle Hunter with the long legs. He's explosive on the pass rush. He can move, great speed, great burst, meaning, he can turn that speed on. He's another guy, though, who's raw. He only played, I think, 23 or 22 games in college. In his history, there's some check marks, some things that you'd want to verify. He missed a lot of, I think 2018 it was, with an ACL tear. So obviously the doctors and those things those guys are going to look at that knee and make sure it's not degenerative. He's very, very quick off the ball, and by that I mean when the ball snapped, he moves. That's something that's very hard to teach, and he has that. And in the NFL, you have to use that. We've seen Everson Griffin, jump off sides many times, but that's what defensive, it's kind of what they do. They're timing things. They're trying to get just a couple inches on that offensive tackle. But this kid looks the part. I think if he's around late in the first round, I think defensive line is the biggest priority. And again, I haven't seen all the other positions, but if physically he checks out and mentally, and you like him as a kid, he looks, runs, acts, rushes like the defensive ends that we've had here. So I think he'd be an unbelievably good fit for this team.
And I'll double down on it here, Pete. Anytime you have the versatility to drop into pass coverage like Lewis does, obviously that's a perfect fit for what we're doing here, and it speaks to the sort of athlete that you were describing. So we greatly appreciate you joining us for the defensive line breakdown, Pete. I know you're going to be back with another position. Remember, Viking fans, you can go to Viking.com and get all of the position-by-position breakdowns for the 2020 NFL Draft, and we will see you back here very soon. Hey, Viking fans, Cy Amundson here, back with VEN's 2020 Draft Preview. We're going position by position, and right now I'm joined by Ben Leber. And Ben, we today are talking about the position that it feels like Viking fans have been talking about for a long time, offensive line.
This is the big one, man. We're at the point where this is the position that I think Viking fans have been talking about for years. And the Vikings have addressed it. They have gone after offensive linemen, specifically center. And fans just still aren't happy. So here we are with a big position, and it is a position of need. And the good thing is, because of that second pick now in the first round, I think that they're in line for a really a high caliber starter that's going to fall them at 22.
And you sent me a list of guys that you love, and so why don't we jump right into it?
Yeah. Well, so the way I sort of broke it down to you, and I'll break it down to the fans, that I will preface it with this. You may think that either the best offensive guard or one of the best tackles, there's just no way that we're going to be able to get that player because we're so far down the draft board. Well, here's the reality. When you look back at the last 5 drafts, on average, at pick 22, you're going to get the 3rd best offensive tackle in the draft. And you can get, and it's happened recently in the past, the number 1 offensive guard in the draft as well. And so just because you're at pick 22 and there are some really highly talented guys, don't think that it's automatically, we're not going to get that guy. Yeah, you may not get number 1 or 2, but as far as an offensive tackle goes, if that's where the team is leaning, then you could get possibly the 3rd best or 4th best guy. And in this draft, those type of guys are starters. So I'll start with there. If the Vikings are looking for a left tackle, the way that I have them sort of in order is Andrew Thomas from Georgia, 6'5", 315 pounds. He's sort of svelte, you know. He's lean. He's 315 pounds sounds big. Yes, by weight it's big, but he carries it really well on a 6'5" frame. I really, when I was watching the tape, it was hard to find a lot of negatives about his game. This guy seems like he's the real deal. Like, he really seems like he could be a Pro Bowler within the first couple of years and an All-Pro soon after that. Was a freshman All-American, 2-time All-American after that. He's powerful. He plays with heavy hands. And the thing, again, that I think most coaches really appreciate, he plays with an edge. You know, there's a little bit of nasty to his game. You know, he finishes through the play. He just doesn't block his guy and then he just kind of moves on. He's going to block the guy all the way to the whistle and sometimes beyond. So he's got a great edge about him, a great mentality. He seems to check all the boxes when it comes to athleticism, and he's got the power to go along with that pretty lean frame.
Let's jump back over to Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, because and correct me if I'm wrong, he's the first true freshman to ever start for Kirk Ferentz. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's something, you know, Ferentz has been there forever, you know, yeah. and to hear that he's the first true freshman to ever start, it kind of blew me away. And I think it goes to show you how talented he is. Another one of these, I know Mike Zimmer loves these wrestler types. You know, when you look at Elflein and Bradbury, both of those guys were wrestling champs in high school. And Tristan Wirfs is another one of these guys that played at a high level of football, but then also transitioned to the wrestling mat and was a state champion his senior year. So he understands leverage. He understands hand placement. I think wrestlers naturally just have a good sense of body awareness, and you can see that in his game. Great overall, just like kind of lateral movement from side to side. So I like, you know, Wirfs with his makeup and what his mentality is to be a guard.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Let's talk about Austin Jackson, the kid you mentioned from USC, because the thing that stuck out to me on him is that he both comes from a pedigree and yet still has like this nasty streak to him, which you don't always see both of those things. Like, one thing you had mentioned is he seems to like excel as the game goes on and get nastier as the game goes on.
He sort of feels out in the first quarter of the game. He's just not going through the motions, but you can just see him sort of getting a feel for the edge rushers, getting a feel for the defense. And then all of a sudden in the second half, it's like he hits another gear. And he seems very well conditioned. Like you said, he plays with a lot of edge. The guy just scraps and claws. He's not quite as talented as Andrew Thomas, but I think he has the same sort of makeup and plays with the same nasty that he plays with as well.
Last one for you. You put 2 centers on your list, Lloyd Cushenberry and Tyler Biadasz. Obviously, this team drafted Bradbury incredibly. I think the highest center they'd ever taken in the draft last year. It's unlikely that we would look to change course at that position. So which one of these two guys, since they're on your list, do you see having the best chance of transitioning into the guard spot?
Well, I like Biadasz's size a little bit more. If you're going to be a guard, I would like to see you, right around 6'4", where he's at. I feel like Cushenberry, though, is just the better player. And that's, I know that might fly counter to what the awards say, because Biadasz won the Remington Award for the best center in the league last year. But when I watched the film, I think Cushenberry is just more athletic. I think he gives you a little bit more. I think he anchors just a little bit better. I think he plays under his feet a little bit better. I think his hand quickness is a little bit better when he comes to hand fighting. So, there's something about Lloyd's game, and maybe I'm not doing it justice as far as articulating it, but I sort of just, the eye test to me looks like Cushenberry is the better player than Biadasz.
Excellent. Well, Ben, as always, this was as good as it gets. Thank you, buddy. Viking fans, remember we have all the positions up on Vikings.com. Tune in for more stuff as we keep putting it out. Thank you, guys. See you soon. Hey, Viking fans. Welcome back to our 2020 draft preview. I'm Cy Amundson. We're going position by position, looking at some of the Vikings' needs and possible picks. We are joined once again by Pete Berich, former linebacker, current color analyst. And Pete, today we're talking tight ends. And I know a lot of Viking fans might not have tight ends in their minds as we go into this draft, but Rick Spielman has always done a great job of taking the best players available throughout the draft that he thinks will help this team. So it's not unreasonable, given the departure of David Morgan, that the Vikings would look for a tight end at some point throughout this.
No, and I agree with you 100% on that. You're always looking for guys, but the cool part is that Kirk Cousins may not want another tight end, but Dalvin Cook may want one of these tight ends. The run game, having a tight end that can hold up in the running game and block a defensive end is hugely important. We saw that for years with Jim Kleinsasser. When you have a guy like that, you take a look at the group that we're looking at. Harrison Bryant from Florida Atlantic, I think, is the best overall tight end in this group. 65 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6'2", about 250, 240. Runs decent, runs about a 4.7, but great run after the catch. You very rarely see this kid be brought to the ground by the first guy who hits him. So I think overall, from a versatility standpoint, they did put him in as an H-back. So that's kind of like what Morgan would do. He'd line up sort of like a fullback sometimes, kind of on the edge of the line of scrimmage. So this kid, this Harrison Bryant, has that ability as well. And when he does block, he gets after it. He drives his legs. He's not just kind of position blocking and getting in the way. He's trying to move somebody. So Harrison Bryant, I think, would be a great addition now. Will he be around at a time when we could get him? We'll see. Hunter Bryant, tight end out of Washington. Good, solid receiving tight end, but he's kind of a poor man's Irv Smith Jr., right? We kind of already have that guy. We have him, then we have, Rudolph in the red zone. So I don't think Hunter Bryant, although he's a, great player, brings anything else that this team doesn't already have. And then there's Thaddeus Moss from LSU. We all love the Moss name, and we remember what Randy did. Thaddeus played a lot of kind of a big wide receiver position. He does work his rear end off, and he's not afraid to stick his nose in there, because tight ends, there's a group of tight ends who think, hey, I get paid to catch the ball and I get paid to score touchdowns. I don't get paid to hit defensive ends and play fullback, so they don't like it. But that, Thaddeus will stick his nose in there. He's not afraid to. Good hands and those kinds of things. But I think that's between what we already have. We have that space pretty much full. The next two guys, though, are intriguing. The first one's Cole Kmet from Notre Dame. Big guy, 6'4", 250, decent speed at 4.7, good hands, good run after the catch. He's not unbelievable, but he's solid. The thing with him, though, is with his frame, you can still put some weight on him and be a run blocker. I didn't get a chance to see too much film on him as a pure tight end run blocking. But if that is his forte, now you've got someone with some versatility. Now you get a guy that can line up, hold up, because let's face it, anyone who plays that other tight end position is going to block. Yeah, you're going to get the screen every once in a while. You're going to get a bootleg maybe to you. You kind of a keep them honest type play. But Cole Kmet, I think, would fill that role. The guy that I find intriguing is Adam Troutman from Dayton, meaning that he might be there later on in the draft, the 5th, the 6th rounds down there. He's a 6'5", 253-pound guy, runs about a 4.8, but he just has good hands, good red zone target, but he's big and he's solid. And I think a guy like that, if he wants to block, can move a pile. And I think that's what we need. And I think Dalvin Cook understands and knows that the running game it really helps when you have a tight end that could either seal an edge or cut off an edge and take care of these defensive linemen that we see out there. So a good blocking tight end is something that is going to give another facet to this offense. Is it everything about this offense? No, but it gives you the potential, for, like I said, for the bootlegs, for the outside runs, for a lot of different things. And I think that's how we've missed Morgan. And a guy like, Adam Troutman could absolutely, I think, fill that role.
Well, and as you see, Pete, the offenses in the NFL continue to evolve, and you see these prospects coming out that can do so many different things from the wide receiver, running back, or tight end position. That's what's really intriguing about a guy like Troutman, because you're right, he's got that big body, could block, but he has the sort of hands that he could be a little bit of David Morgan, and he could be a little bit of Kyle Rudolph, and he could fill a bunch of different needs if he ends up being a good prospect down the line.
No, absolutely. And so you just want to complement that group, right? You sit there and look at that group in a meeting room, and you have your, like I said, Kyle Rudolph's the red zone guy. You got Irv Smith Jr. He's the receiving tight end. He'll block and do some of those things. But then you have this big body, almost another offensive tackle, because he's not much he's not much smaller than some of these offensive linemen that we have. But you'd love to have that kind of size on the edge of that offense and that offensive line, and it's going to give defenses some issues.
Yeah, 6'5", 253 is a big dude. Pete, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, Viking fans, we're breaking down every position for the 2020 NFL Draft and what the Purple might be looking for. Check them out on Vikings.com, and we will see you guys back here soon. Hey, Viking fans, Cy Amundson here with the Vikings Entertainment Network. We are going position by position, getting you ready for the 2020 NFL Draft. I am joined right now by Ben Leber. And Ben, we are talking running backs. And I know a lot of Viking fans are thinking right now, why are we talking running backs? We're set at running back. We got the best running back in the league. We got a stud backup. But in today's NFL, Ben, there's no such thing as too much depth at the running back position. So You've identified some guys later in the draft that you like, but I assume you can't have too many talented running backs.
Yeah, when I was looking at this and I'm thinking about what the Vikings could do, for so many other positions, it's like, what do we need right now? Like, we need some help right now at cornerback. We need some help right now at offensive line. We need some help right now at defensive end. And then you look at running backs and you're like, yeah, but I don't want to think about that position because I'm pretty happy there. Like, they've done a hell of a job the last 3 or 4 years looking at these guys and drafting these guys and setting this team up for success with the running backs. But there are some talented players. Let's get this out of the way. They're not going to be obviously first round or even second round, and maybe third round. But we're looking at definitely one of the third round picks, possibly, and then into the fourth and fifth and beyond. So let's get DeAndre Swift out of the way.
The nice bounce to the outside, and there is indeed that big play. Right up the middle, Swift with a big hole, touchdown Georgia.
Swift takes it and attacks inside the 25. Swift is in, touchdown.
He's probably the most polished, NFL ready, quick, elusive, all that stuff. The running back from Georgia, I think he'll be a first round selection. And then after that, a lot of these really, really talented guys are going to fall down in the second and third round.
Dobbins just walks in. He's got it again. You can see the shimmy and the shake, and Dobbins.
Who's going to be around maybe with the second pick in the third round? I don't think it's going to be J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, another really talented player, or even Jonathan Taylor.
They hand it off. Taylor, how about this? Got it to Taylor. All the way into the end zone. Touchdown.
There he goes. JT.
His production, he's got track speed. He's just got such a name that I think it's going to be really hard to pass up a talent like that and have him fall all the way to the second pick in the third round. But I do have a couple players that I'm looking at as well as far as late round picks.
Well, and I think specifically because you look at how much the running back position has changed in this league over the past few years and where it's heading, and look at what the 49ers did last year. You can never have enough guys that do enough different things. So one of the guys you stuck on there was Cam Akers from FSU.
Akers, he dives in for the touchdown. They get it to number 3 again. Akers, he'll score on the ground. Here's Akers, stumbled through the hole but staying on his feet. He's at the 20, trying to win a foot race to the 10, to the end zone. Touchdown, Florida State. Cam Akers from 50 yards out.
And that one is, it's a little bizarre, right? Because, Dalvin Cook, Florida State, and what did Cam do when he came in? He broke his freshman rushing record. And so that he's talented. He truly hit the ground running. I don't think that the high caliber AC was too much for him to handle as an 18-year-old. So, he really rose up to the occasion and was big football ready. I like a lot about him. He's about 5'10", just shy of 220 pounds. So he's a thick dude. He doesn't look that thick when you watch him play. I think he's got a nice build of his lower body, of his hips and butt and his thighs. So he's not like big physically up top. So I think he carries most of his weight in his lower body, and that's good. And you can see why he breaks a lot of arm tackles. He's very smooth. He's got good vision. I would say of the guys that I've already talked about, the best pass catching running back of the group. So if you want to kind of go back to depth, and it's good to have a lot of talent in the backfield, you could almost look at this guy as not necessarily an H-back, but if you end up going like pony personnel where you have 2 running backs in the backfield, this dude can be dynamic, not just with screen passes. I'm talking like out of the backfield, running real routes. He could be a matchup nightmare, and if you get him for the right value, look out, because you could have 2 Florida State running backs in the backfield just running all over you.
You're exactly right. And the thing that I noticed with him was how quickly he gets up to speed. And given the way this team wants to do things on offense, that would be a major asset.
Yeah, a major asset, because the whole league is going to more of a wide open game. They're looking for open space, and it's not so much just chug and chug on first and second down and then throw the ball on third down. They want to get these guys spread out, even if you're in base offensive personnel, where you can maybe have a running back and a fullback. Well, with a guy like Cam Akers, you could have 2 running backs in there on first down, and they can either run the ball or they can split these guys out. And Dalvin could be one receiver, and Cam could be the other receiver. And I think that's where you can best utilize his services, because of the vision, because of the quickness, the way that he can catch the ball, and again, just run basically the whole running back route tree. He can be a dangerous weapon. And so I like the possibilities of him, not so much in between the tackles, but use him out in space.
The next guy I want to talk about, Ben, reminds me of someone that is important to both of us, because you played at K-State. I have been a long-time K-State fan, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a little bit of Darren Sproles to him.
Yeah, a little bit.
Edwards-Helaire dances to the outside into the end zone. It's a 4-yard touchdown run for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Here's Edwards-Helaire with a big gain. He's down the numbers and finally tracked down from behind.
You know football. I see a tiny little powerful guy that's a beast, and I go, Darren Sproles. You can tell me why they're more different than that, but just off the cuff, it reminded me of him.
I would say the one difference that I think is apparent to me is foot speed. Darren had incredible foot speed. He could pick up his feet and put them down and make full speed cuts faster than I think I've really seen in my time. I know Barry Sanders is probably number one on everybody's list, but Darren was unique in that way. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the same sort of build at 5'7", 205 pounds ish. So he's got a similar build. I think he's a little bit more compact in the way he runs, doesn't run with as much elusiveness, but otherwise still extremely productive. I like the way he can kind of float around. I like the way that he's got good lower body strength. And the other thing that was surprising too was, he showed good maturity as a running back, and that meaning that as he goes up to the line, he's still very patient. You see some of these guys that just always want to hit the home run, and they always just want to bust through the line. But he's patient. He'll set up his blocks, and then he'll hit it. And I like that maturity. Very well coached down there at LSU. So I think he's going to be pro ready. Not a blazing fast guy. About a 4.6 40. So you're going to have to mitigate some of that stuff, and maybe his football speed in the NFL is a little bit faster than 4.6. But I like him for what he can do as far as a kick returner, a pass catcher, and a runner. Again, could be a valuable asset later in the rounds.
Well, and I think I do the opposite that everybody does. The knocks on him entice me because this is a kid who's 5'7", and the knock on him is he might not be fast enough to play in the league, but we're still talking about him getting drafted. So imagine the amount of things that he has to do well with that stature and that speed to still be getting consideration. Those are the sort of guys that I think are going to find a way to be productive in the league.
Yeah, and I think again, you're talking about intangibles, and I too like the guys that sort of are doubted a little bit and are always told that you can't be what you dream to be because of X, Y, and Z, and they say, well, bleep you, I'm going to go and do it anyway. There's a mentality and this sense of urgency about themselves that they will do anything to prove you wrong, and I'm going to guess, based on his upbringing, based on the fact that he's had high level of success at LSU, he's not going to lose that. He's going to get in the NFL, and he's going to hear guys like me tell him that he's too small and he's too slow, and he's going to say, all right, this is no different than what I had to prove out of LSU. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. So I do sort of like that mental makeup from these guys that people doubt.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, even though I continue to doubt you, you continue to crush it nonstop. So obviously you share that with some of these players. You're the best, man. Thank you for joining us.
You're the best.
Yeah, you're right. Keep saying it. Viking fans, we're doing position-by-position breakdowns. You can find them on Vikings.com, and we will see you all right back here real soon. Hey, Viking fans, Cy Amundson here with another 2020 NFL Draft Profile Breakdown. Joining us, Ben Leber from Vikings Entertainment Network. And Ben, we have finally come to the position that I have been waiting for. I mean, I'm excited about all this, but let's talk defensive backs because fans have seen a number of them leave the team, and I think everybody's wondering where are we going to go? So let's get into some of the guys that are at the top of our need list.
Yeah, I think as everybody sort of looks at the draft at 22 and 25, and you try not to overthink it because it's easy to overthink some of these things because you have nothing but time right now to think about this stuff if you're a football fan. And if you just look at the simplicity of what this team needs, it's offensive line and it's defensive backs. And most importantly, it's going to be cornerbacks. So, yeah, man, I'm excited because I think there's some really good corners in this draft, and we're in a good position to get one of these top quality corners that I think can start right away. And again, we can talk about safeties too.
Tell me about a couple of the young guys in the safety class.
Well, I think everybody's really high on Grant Delpit right now from LSU, and rightfully so.
Play action, look out. Down he goes, it's Delpit with a sack.
Did Delpit hang on? He did. What an interception.
Maybe the last guy you want to throw a football up to the club to bat. He is a ball-hawking safety here.
Delpit can play center field. He can play man. He can blitz. He can come up and run support.
He's a former All-American, Jim Thorpe Award winner as the best defensive back in the country. And he has so much position flexibility. I think that's the one thing that really shows out when you watch his tape. You know, he can blitz a little bit on the outside. I don't think he's terribly effective at that, but he can at least be a bigger body that can blitz. He can play in the box. He shows this ability to be the deep center fielder. And he's just really, really good at understanding spatial awareness, route recognition, puts his body in a good position sometimes just to close off windows. Now, I think that he could be better about baiting the quarterback in some of those situations. Like, he knows where he's supposed to be. He knows where the routes are, and he'll take it away. But once he gets savvy enough, and I think that's why people think he has such a high ceiling, once he gets properly coached and is savvy enough, he can sort of poach in different areas, knowing where he's got to be and knowing what the route is, just to pick off some passes and make the quarterback make some stupid throws. But he shows a lot that you like.
Well, and given that exact thing, like, we have the defensive back teacher in Mike Zimmer here, and one of the things you pointed out and I went and watched the video is his body positioning in any sort of coverage. I mean, that he almost has to be, I don't want to be dramatic, but one of the higher ceiling guys given those two factors.
Yeah, and I think that he sort of covers a lot of space because he's a bigger body. He's 6'2", about 215 pounds. So he's got all the ideal height and weight that you're looking for. He looks long. He looks like he covers a lot of ground. And I think from a quarterback's perspective, as he's looking down the field, that's kind of a bigger body, an athletic body in the back end of the defense that you always got to be aware of. And so you can always see him. And I think even that flash of color sometimes can throw the quarterback off. And again, he's got sort of everything you're looking for. And I think that he can fit into this modern NFL where if he has to be down in the box sometimes, he can be that kind of bigger, strong safety feel, smaller linebacker look.
How about let's move to another guy that you identified from the safety position, Ashton Davis out of California.
Ashton Davis, who walked onto the program 5 years ago, had to beg for a spot on the roster, and now is a potential NFL star in the future.
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to call a couple Cal games, and he for sure is a guy that when you're watching the tape during the course of the week, like, all right, this guy can play. Like, this number 27 can flash something here. And he's a kickoff returner. He's a punt returner. He originally came to Cal Berkeley on a track scholarship. So he's got fantastic track speed. And you can see that in his game. Like, I think he's better in long runs, as a deep center fielder where it's Delpit maybe can be in the box a little bit more. I think Ashton Davis is a guy that can be more of a true center field guy that on a long run can really close some grounds, can really take the ball out of the air. As far as him being like an in-box guy, I don't think that he has the greatest athletic movements in a short area, not the best feet, not the most fluid hips, but he's going to come down, he's going to hit you. He's a really good tackler for really just kind of learning the game from a track perspective. So again, a lot of potential with this guy. I think the only red flag is he's had some injuries in college.
Well, the one other thing I saw people say about him is he misses a lot of tackles because he'll go for those big hits. But given his inexperience, if you have the right teacher, I mean, that might not end up being a terrible thing. If you can fix that little thing and he's just a heat-seeking missile.
Yeah. Well, and he's kind of fun to watch because, when I was watching him, just to make it appropriate for Vikings fans, he's a little bit like Andrew Sendejo, where he's going to miss some tackles, but he's going to light somebody up too. And he's kind of fun to watch. And he's a bigger body than Andrew is, so he's going to pack a little bit more punch. He runs with a little bit more speed. So think about Sendejo and some of the big hits, but just on a bigger body and a little bit more explosion. And so I can see why people kind of like physicality. That's going to stick in your brain when you see a physical player.
Absolutely. Well, let's shift from safeties to corners because that's what everybody's really talking about. You have 3 of your top 4 guys are gone. You have all these picks in the first 3 rounds. I think the first name you threw our way is a little bit of a familiar one.
TREVON Diggs, knocked away by TREVON Diggs. TREVON Diggs running down the sideline. TREVON Diggs him.
I looked at Trevon Diggs, Stefan's brother, as a potential when I'm looking at the possible picks and the possible prospects that are going to be at 22 and 25. You know, obviously the top guys, the C.J. Hendersons, the Jeffrey Okudah, those guys aren't going to be there. So who is going to be there? And I think the likelihood of getting Trevon is pretty slim, given that his brother just got traded away, and maybe it just wouldn't be best to bring in his brother into this situation. But I still like a lot of stuff about him. He probably of the cornerbacks that I looked at, I think sort of like Delpit has the highest ceiling because of his size and really his inexperience. Just like his brother, he's a former wide receiver, turned into a cornerback, had a broken foot, didn't play in half of the season, and all of a sudden now you look at just his 2-year resume, it's not a lot of starts, but he's highly productive. So I think it's, wow, we've got a young player here that's just learning how to play cornerback, making a ton of plays at Alabama, and he's just still pretty raw.
Let's go from a guy who's a bit raw to a guy who's anything but that. Damon Arnette from Ohio State. I mean, this is a guy who's been playing since his true freshman year.
Knocked away, Damon Arnette, well defended. And intercepted Damon Arnette. Watch out. Damon Arnette breaks across the field. Damon Arnette still on the move.
You know, about 6 foot, about 200 pounds. So he's a stocky build, not super fast, about a 4.56. But I think I like about him his aggressiveness. You know, kind of like when I talked about Ashton Davis, it's his physicality that stands out on tape. That if he's coming off a block from a wide receiver, if he's fitting up in the run game, if he's jamming somebody at the line of scrimmage, he's physical. He's physical throughout his game. And in some ways, when you read some news stories on him, they've had to work with him to kind of keep his temper down a little bit. Like he plays with so much aggression that as a corner, yeah, you need a sense of urgency, but you can't let plays and the negative plays and physical plays sometimes affect the next play. And I think really that's kind of his biggest thing. He's got to play within himself, but I love his short area quickness. I like his footwork. I like his hands. He's just not super tall. He's not super fast. I see him more as kind of a true nickel type guy than an outside corner.
Last guy on your list is Bryce Hall, a kid out of Virginia.
Broken up. Incomplete. That was Hall again. Shoots it downfield, intercepted. Bryce Hall the pick.
I don't want to speak for you, but one of the things when I looked at him that I know you had to be thinking, given Zim's penchant for blitzing from the corner, this dude has that ability.
Oh, yeah, he has that ability. Again, kind of like Arnette, has been playing since his true freshman year, a lot of snaps under his belt. And the other thing is, a lot of these college corners will just stick to one side. Either you're just a left corner or a boundary corner or a field corner, however they want to designate it, they stick to one side. But with Bryce Hall, he can play both. He'll flip-flop. Virginia kind of used him as a true shutdown type of corner. So whatever the star receiver was, he was going to follow that guy all around the field. And so he's very comfortable traveling left to right and right to left. He does blitz really well with effectiveness. He has that same thing as Arnette with just that kind of bravado, and he carries himself really well. And as much as I think he has a little bit of physical limitations with his overall speed, somehow, some way, he's always there to make a play. He's so sticky in coverage. He's going to stay on the receivers no matter where they are, and it may not look pretty, but at the end of the day, he's knocking down passes and he's making difference-making plays.
I'd love to see what would happen if Zim could get his hands on a guy who's already prepared to be, because that's what you want. When you draft a first-round corner, you want a guy that's going to chase the star receivers all over the field.
Well, especially in this climate that we're in, where we're probably not going to have an OTA and a minicamp, and so we're going to have a draft in a few days, and all of a sudden these guys are going to have no time with their coaches, no time with their new teams. They can't get up to NFL speed, and they're most likely just going to get thrown right into training camp, and then a few weeks later be expected to make plays in a real NFL football game. So you want the guys that are most polished and they can step on the field right away.
Before I get you out of here, I got to ask you, one of my favorite players of all time has a son. He is a defensive back. All Viking fans are talking about him. Talk about Antoine Winfield Jr. a little bit.
And it is intercepted by Antoine Winfield.
And it's Winfield taking it to the house. A pick six for Minnesota.
And it's intercepted again by Antoine Winfield.
It's picked off! Oh my goodness, it's Winfield!
Stud. You know, he's just a stud. I think when you the nice thing about the draft from the end of the football season till now is we have all this time. And sometimes for guys like this, it takes that amount of time, which can seem like an eternity in the football world, but you need those months to sort of watch the tape. And I think sometimes break down the stigma that, you know, he didn't come from a blue blood university. You know, yes, he carries a name, but if Antoine Winfield Jr. was playing in the SEC, I think he'd be getting a lot more love. And I think there are stereotypes built within college football that he's had to break down. And given the time, I think people are starting to respect his game a little bit and say, wow, he actually could compete for being the top safety taken off the board. And I think it's deserved because what he lacks maybe in size and stature, you know, much stockier than his dad, but he's instinctful like his dad. You know, all of his plays were coming off of coverage. All of his plays were using his tremendous vision, his football IQ, some of the things that sometimes you just can't coach. And I think he has it. He's just a football player, and that's what a lot of coaches look for. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he's the first safety taken off the board.
I love it. Ben, you crushed every single one of these. Thank you so much for doing them. And we'll see you draft night.
It's my pleasure, man. Yes. We are so close. All this build-up, we are so close, man. It's going to be fun.
Hey, Viking fans, Cy Amundson here. 2020 NFL Draft right around the corner. We are breaking down quarterbacks today, and to help us, the one, the only voice of the Minnesota Vikings, we are joined by Mr. Paul Allen. Hello, Paul.
What's going on, big boy? Excited for that draft, are you?
I can't. I absolutely can't wait. I've been getting to do all these previews, and from you guys learning who I should be excited about. And I know, Paul, I know this one's a strange one because we just gave Cousins a big extension. We've got a good backup, but you know, Spielman's the sort of guy who takes value when he finds value in the draft. He's always just drafted good players, so it's not outside the realm of possibility we could wind up with a quarterback.
Yeah, man, you know, I'm glad you pointed to Sean Mannion because like doing 9 to noon on KFAN and they signed Sean Mannion, you know, most people are like, but I'll come back quickly and say, well, let's not forget, Kirk had the best season of his career last year. Sean Mannion was Jared Goff's backup when the LA Rams went to the Super Bowl. So when you know what your role is, and that is to amplify the starter, and Sean is incredibly smart. He did a great job, and I'm really, really happy he's back.
Yeah, me too. Well, you sent me a list of guys that you've really been vibing with as we approach the draft. So I'm going to throw them out, and I want you to tell me why people should be excited about them.
Well, there's a series of quarterbacks here, and there are a fair amount of quarterbacks in this draft per the way I assume Gary Kubiak is going to run the offense and predicated on knowing, knock on wood, when we get there, Cousins doesn't miss games. Now, Jake Browning is also under contract, and I'm a fan of Jake not only improving because he knows the system, but just Jake, the guy, is fantastic. So whichever person on which they move, if they do, that person has to compete with Jake Browning. I would begin with Jordan Love.
Quick set for Love. Sideline ball. Got it. Touchdown. Wide open break down the sideline. A blown coverage leads to 6 for Utah State.
Now, Jordan Love is a quarterback from Utah State. When you think Utah State, you know, you immediately need to consider the level of competition or lack thereof. So with Jordan Love, when I watch his plays, the way he runs play action and the run pass option reminds me a lot of Colin Kaepernick, and they're both about the same height. He's very, very fluid running the play action and the run pass option. His deep ball is fantastic.
Pressure comes. He lofts it up high in the air. Pass is caught.
35 yards, another big play.
Now, with Jordan, And again, I'm watching highlights. I'm not breaking down the all 22. It seems a fair amount of the time he will hone in on one guy, picking on a member of an adversarial secondary who's overmatched. And that happens a lot in college football. So I'm not saying he's strictly a one-read guy, but I saw a lot of that, and he's very good at finding that guy. Now, with Jordan Love in playing at Utah State, over the last 2 years against ranked teams like Boise State, when they were ranked, stuff like that, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he wasn't absolutely at his best in those games. His arm talent is fantastic. I think he's a wild card in this draft because of his deep game and how well he moves.
Well, I think you hit it on the head, because everything you read about the guy is he's the most polarizing quarterback maybe in the draft. He's got this unbelievable arm talent, but you never know where it's going to land on the field. Let's talk about a guy that people think is has a little bit more of a pedigree, Jake Fromm out of Georgia.
Yeah. Now, Jake, playing in the SEC, obviously went against the stiffest of competition all of his run with the Bulldogs.
Here's Fromm to throw. Coming across the middle, it is Pickens. Touchdown, Georgia. Fromm lets it fly. Back shoulder, Touchdown.
When I watch Jake, I see a player who looks the part. He's very, very much in control of games. Conversely, compared to Jordan Love, in my opinion, not speaking for the team, certainly not trying to pretend like I'm a GM, but I think his deep game leaves a little something to be desired, and it just doesn't stick in there like a Kirk Cousins deep pass does. But nevertheless, you also need to consider with Jake and some of these numbers he put up, he was protected by 2 offensive tackles who both could go in round 1 of this draft. The left tackle is going to go in round 1, and Isaiah Wilson, the right tackle, 6'7", phenomenal. Maybe he'll go rounds 2 or 3. So with Jake, he just looks polished, like a guy who belongs in the NFL.
Now, those 2 guys might not be the top of the draft, but they're getting talked about a lot. Do you have a sleeper for us?
I don't exactly know how much of a wild card he is. He's going to get drafted. His name is James Morgan, Florida International University.
Got time to throw again. There's the deep shot you asked for. Maloney's out there. Another shot from Morgan. Way down the field. That one's hauled in. Catch.
My radio show producer, Nordo, 9 to noon, KFAN, home of the Vikings. He actually put me on this guy 2.5 weeks ago, put some time into him. 6'4", massive hands. His hands are nearly 10 inches. Deep game, terrific. But in chatting with somebody who's close to the FIU program and knows, smaller school football better than me, from what I understand, James is very, very smart. And absorbing a National Football League system should not be a problem. Born leader, from what I was told. And James Morgan is going to get drafted. He's going to make a team in 2020. We'll see which team it is, but he might be sneaky good.
I love it, Paul. Thank you so much. You're the best of the best. And I know this is right in your wheelhouse, buddy.
Hey, man, this is fantastic, Cy. It's the best we can do right now. Thank you very much. Thank you, VEN. Vikings.